Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, glad to be back.
John, on Friday, Novo Resources doubled the daily traded value of TSXV resource listings by $34 million worth of stock at the close. What was that all about?
That, Jim, was very, very unusual. Novo had traded, typical amounts of stock most of the day, but then in the last half hour, at about 3:30, which is 12:30 West Coast time, the volume trade had started to step up a couple $1 million worth, then almost $3 million worth in the last 9 minutes, and then precisely at the close, there was this phenomenal 6.2 million shares that changed hands, representing $34 million worth of volume. It was like all of a sudden the sellers and the buyers were all teed up to do this at the very close on Friday. And there's a very good reason for it, because the GDXJ, which is an ETF run by the VanEck called the Junior Gold Miners, it had decided to add Novo to its ETF, and it ended up disclosing that it had bought just over 2.6 million shares, representing 0.25% of its overall fund's holdings. Now, that's only about a third of all that crazy volume that traded right at the close. So you ask yourself, what was all this other buying about? Well, there are a lot of funds, hedge funds, which emulate a publicly traded ETF or an index, and obviously everybody had been tuned in that there was indeed that this Novo was going to be added, and it helps explain why since sort of late February, even though there's been no significant fundamental fresh news for Novo, the stock has trended from a low of about $3 to Friday's close of $5.45. So obviously this has been in the works, and the funds have been positioning themselves for it, and Friday was the big day that everybody made Novo part of their ETF emulations, and GDXJ made Novo part of itself. Now, a year ago, the GDXJ had run into a problem. It used to be based on the MVS, Global Junior Gold Miners Index, which consisted largely of mining companies, but based on the weightings that the MVIS index had, the GDXJ had become so popular that some of its holdings were starting to approach that 20% threshold that triggers all kinds of takeover rules. So they realized we can't really keep emulating this official index because we have become too popular, which is kind of odd because the GDXJ peaked in 2011, and after a bit of a rebound in 2016 has been trending sideways. So it's kind of encouraging to see that money is going into this index. So last year they made the decision to change its definition to allow earlier stage companies such as Novo, which have to have a certain minimum market cap, and they included other exchanges such as the Australian Stock Exchange and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange to broaden the base away from Canadian and North American listed companies. And this was a bit of a catastrophe last year. June 16th was the day that it all had to rebalance. And a lot of the Canadian juniors found that they were either eliminated from the GDXJ or had their weighting reduced. So that was kind of a catastrophe day for the junior resource sector. And I have to say, I don't think the juniors ever really quite recovered from the downtrend that began around then. The only exceptions were the odd stocks such as Novo with its Pilbara Wits 2.0 story that bucked the general downtrend last year. Now, in terms of the stock trending to where it is now, sort of between $5 and $5.50, Quentin Henney has indicated that they will not be producing any results from those 5 to 6 5-ton bulk samples they're taking from Comet Well until mid-April. So there is no news on that front. They plan to take 50 to 60 samples total. They hope to be finished by sort of mid-July, It's being taken along a 2,500 meter by 500 meter stretch of the Comet Well property called the Power Line, showing they're in the process of drilling a 200 meter grid of scout holes, tighter spacing where they plan to dig trenches and extract these bulk samples. And they've conceded that they are now treating it like a kimberlite dike system, where you use core drilling to carefully delineate the geology, and then you take your bulk samples, process them for the coarse nuggets just as you do for the macro diamonds, and then correlate the results with the geology, the detailed geology, and they hope that this will meet the geostatistical requirements for a 43101 or JORC estimate, which they hope to have in midsummer. So this is a very critical milestone. In the meantime, we are going to get a series of results starting in April. Some will have high-grade gold in it, some won't. They have to do this systematically. They can't just run around with a metal detector and draw pink circles on the rocks and then tell Backhoe Bob to come over here and dig this up and put it into the sack so that we can get a nice gold grade. They have to produce a mineable resource. They are not sure that they will be able to meet the geostatistical requirements. They said we may have to go to trial mining, and in fact they say we will in any case go to trial mining before we attempt any large-scale development. And the bad news that has come out is that the permitting cycle for trial mining is about 18 months. So this means that what the Backhoe Bobs want, namely start mining these nuggets, can't begin until sometime in the second half of 2019. So the next 3 to 6 months are going to be very critical for this play. We need to see what sort of grades these bulk samples yield from the target conglomerate, and we do need to see that they can be stitched together into a resource estimate so that one can start thinking in terms of developing this conglomerate unit on a large scale. We still haven't heard the results from the Purdy's reward samples. They extracted several of them in last December when they realized those 300 to 600 kilo samples were inadequate that were being processed at the Nagram facility. Those are supposed to be run through the new SGS facility in Perth. We are waiting for those results. Artemis Resources itself, the stock has been flat. It has not tracked the uptrend. There is no particular fresh information on from Comet Well that would lead anybody to expect a higher valuation for Novo. So the explanation has to be that the GDXJ and these other tracking funds have decided to include Novo as part of their indices. How long this current valuation will hold, I do not know. But one interesting development, on March 22nd, 23rd, later this week, there is a conference in Perth, part of a bigger battery, iron, and other mineral sands conference. It's called the Pilbara Conglomerate Gold Conference. It's the first of its kind. There's maybe 10 or so companies that are sponsors. There's academic speakers. This is quite interesting that the Australians who have poo-pooed this Pilbara play as a Canadian fantasy, a big delusion by Eric Sprott and Quentin Henney, that they've looked at this decades ago and found nothing. They are now starting to take it seriously, and one of the interesting topics is going to be, okay, we did think this had the earmarks for a Witwatersrand Reef type system of gold and uranium. We drilled in many locations. We didn't find anything comparable to WITS 1.0. We did find the stuff in the Marble Bar and Nulligeen area that's sort of not comparable grade. This isn't really worth mining on a large scale. Certainly nothing to get hugely excited about. But what is it that we have overlooked in that past exploration? What is going on here that requires us to take a very serious second look at the Pilbara to see if indeed it has a WITS 2.0 endowment of gold that will rival the 2.6 billion ounce endowment in South Africa?
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after the break.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, last week, Ameri Minerals reported results for its SE1 target at Cook Mountain, and the stock instantly dropped 50%. Was the news really that bad?
The news was very disappointing in that the market had built very high expectations. SE1 had been a favorite target of Mark Alibaba right from the beginning of last year. But the frustration the company and its shareholders encountered was that the Forest Service just wasn't interested in granting permits for drilling any of these targets on the Forest Service land. The company managed to drill its Big Banana target, which was on state lands or BLM lands, and that was not a problem getting permitted. Unfortunately, that turned out to be just a graphite conductor associated with a thrust fault. The SE1 was the most prominent. It had an associated arsenic, copper, gold soil geochemical anomaly. And they finally had that breakthrough in December. They got the permit late January. They drilled into it. They got semi-massive to disseminated sulfide mineralization. You, of course, can't tell whether there's any gold in it. Had very thick interval. You could easily imagine a 3 million ton deposit. At the Share Collective, I used their outcome visualization tool to imagine, well, what if we have 3 million tons underground mineable using the 2,000 ton per day Kettle River mill, and it runs 12 grams per ton, similar to the now depleted Buckhorn mine. What would that be worth? And it crunched out an after-tax NPV of around $500 million US, which translated into a future $4 plus share price for Ameri. I then ran it at 5 grams per ton to see what would happen if it was more of a so-so deposit, and that was still a $100 million prize, which could have eventually delivered a dollar target. So there was a pretty good range of gold grades that would be very pleasing to the market, and the market was looking for nice long intersections which could average out to 5 to 12 grams per ton. Instead, they got snippets of 0.3 grams per ton gold, which isn't even good enough for an open pit mine. And anyways, Washington doesn't allow open pit mining, so it was a huge disappointment. It is a skarn type system. If you're not getting it in the guts, the gold in the guts of it, you're pretty much dead. So the stock dropped half. The company moved its drill to the Key West target, which is northeast of the Overlook Oversight area where it spent most of last year drilling away. They have a series of conductors, 3 of them sort of stretching north from the old Key West pit. They've drilled the middle one. They have reported intersecting massive to semi-massive sulfides, which means more sulfide than what they saw on the SE1 target. They've also seen sheeted quartz veins. It's next door to a mine that was operated by Echo Bay until 1994, so we know the fluid flow had plenty of gold in it in that area. But the market this time is saying, this cry wolf thing is too much. The stock has stayed where it dropped to. This middle Key West target will be assayed. It does have the potential to deliver the grades. They're drilling also the one closer to the pit. And the reason the market's saying, forget it, we're not going to chase you up this time, because, even though you've got good-looking mineralization and you're in an area where there are these, deposits that have been mined in the past, you have to get us to believe that Echo Bay and its successor, Kinross, would somehow have not managed to find something so close to the deposit and just overlook something that could have kept that mine going a lot longer, and certainly from Kinross's perspective, fed the Kettle River mill, which they knew when that was going to run out. And Mark Kalibaba's response to that is, well, for whatever reason, they never did the big regional geophysical survey that we did. We did that in 2016. It lit up all the known deposits, even though they were depleted. Plus, it revealed a whole bunch, some of them nearby the depleted mines, others farther away, such as SE1, where nothing had ever been found. So it is possible that for lack of applying a technology, they could have overlooked something fairly close. If it's not sticking out of the ground, it's pretty hard to find, and there's a plausible reason. But we'll have to wait for assays. This time, no market run up. Ameri shareholders have to sit there, cross their fingers. This set of holes will be the last before the company takes a break to let spring thaw run its course, and we'll have to see what the assays bring to see if Cook Mountain is still alive.
Rainy Mountain royalty was hammered a couple of weeks ago when it reported results for the Brunswick project. Is Brunswick another Discovery Watch bust?
The market certainly thinks that it is a complete all-and-out bust. The latest round of about 15 holes, about just under 1,500 meters, delivered only intervals of 1 meter running 0.1 to 1.6 gram per ton. Within these shear zones that are associated with these IP anomalies, which have been confirmed as reflecting disseminated sulfides. There's plenty of arsenic and antimony in these zones, but the gold just does not seem to have been concentrated. And this is about the third round of drilling that's been done since Bob Middleton got very excited about the Brunswick project in sort of late 2016. He sees it as similar to the Borden project. In fact, it was brought to the company by Mike Tremblay, who was the prospector who brought the Borden play to Probe Mines, which eventually led to a $400 million buyout by Gold Corp. He figures that the arsenic and the antimony are very similar to what he saw at the Bell Creek deposit, with whose discovery he was involved with decades ago. It's now owned by Novo Resources, and it is a big system play. These holes have just scratched the surface. The deepest vertical intersection has been about 150 meters. Everything else has had a vertical depth of 50 to 100 meters. Bob Middleton's going through some sort of deja vu experience that this is just like back when he was on the Hemlo play and they were drilling, just not coming up with anything. And then I think on the 79th hole, they finally hit the other side of a dike, what turned out to be the 20 million ounce Hemlo deposit. But the stock's at 3 to 4 cents. It's the market's saying it's over. Go look at these other projects. The best hope is that they maybe attract a partner who will farm in and apply the sort of brute force drilling that a system play like this recovers, because this sort of hyper-targeted shallow drilling, similar to what Atamera is doing at Cook Mountain, but justified there because we are dealing with discrete semi-massive to massive sulfide skarn targets, which do create a target. Here it is much more subtle. You don't know where the gold mineralization will have ended up. It will take a larger scale, bigger partner to really do justice to the Brunswick play.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799. I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineered gold mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, NV Gold woke up last week with news that the deepening of hole number 6 at the Across the Valley project was underway. Are we seeing a new gold discovery?
We do not quite yet have a new gold discovery, but we are seeing evidence that there may be a substantial prize deep undercover in this part of Nevada. The reason it's called Across the Valley is that it's about 8 to 10 kilometers across Kelly Creek Basin from the Twin Creeks operation. This is a 20 million ounce open pit mine that's owned by Newmont. A little farther to the south is the Turquoise Ridge underground gold mine owned by Barrick, and this is Carlin type mineralization. Twin Creeks was found under gravel cover, basically by projecting some mineralization in the hills that the Chimney Creek target under the gravel, saying there's structures there. It looks interesting. In fact, the history of it is very interesting because the original drilling crew, the person put in charge of doing it, was told, drill to such and such a depth, 150 meters or so. And then when the supervisor came by, he discovered that the holes had all been drilled to 100 meters. And of course, there had been nothing really interesting found. He says, well, why did you stop here? Well, because we don't make open pits much deeper than 100 meters. So he was told, drill them deeper, and then they got into the gold mineralization that ultimately David Grimes from the USGS demonstrated what could be seen by using groundwater hydrogeochemistry analysis, collected all the data before it became disturbed as a giant open pit mine, and basically created the argument for this would be a new approach to exploring Nevada under the gravel cover of the basins, where deposits will have ended up that were formed between 45 and 25 million years ago, but the basin and range topography created by stretching in Nevada, it basically hid half of Nevada as a gold endowment under gravel cover. Now, Quentin Henney is a director of NV Gold, and he has been involved in this area in the past through Evolving Gold. This particular property, the ATV, sits in a checkerboard land pattern, and the ranchers which own the original granted railway-related checker squares, they had never done a deal with anybody until last year, when NV Gold's John Watson was able to do a deal and combine the BLM staked land with a fairly good land package. Part of it covers younger volcanics that really have no hope of containing anything, and the more southwestern part covers the gravel-covered portion of the basin. And Quentin Henney has argued that because of the way the basin and range event displaced and rotated the original geology, there is possibly part of the Twin Creeks Turquoise Ridge systems, gold systems, on the other side of the valley, hidden underneath all these younger volcanics and this gravel. And last fall, NV Gold drilled a dozen or so RC holes based on these Blake anomalies, which suggested some sort of post-mineral leakage coming through the through the volcanics. They drilled through this stuff, and one of the holes intersected what looked like carbonates. And the key host rocks at Twin Creeks is the Comus Formation, a dirty carbonate that is good for soaking up gold when it's properly pumped by a fluid flow. And they twinned the hole with a diamond core hole all the way down to 477 meters and confirmed that the last 120 meters of that were indeed Comus Formation, showing alteration, some evidence of sulfides. And this year they have decided that they are going to deepen that hole another 600 meters, so take it down to about 1,100 meters. And this is in progress now. They must be maybe, 2/3 of the total depth by now. And the stock started to wake up early last week. It had slumbered between 20 and 30 cents. All of a sudden they announced a financing, a small one, about $400,000 at 30 cents, which has now been changed to 44 cents. And the stock was suddenly up at 60, 70 cents. The IROC police was going crazy, saying there must be some inside information. Maybe the drillers are in the bar talking about all this visible gold that you have. But of course, in this type of Carlin system, all the gold is micron-sized. And even worse, it's usually encapsulated in sulfide, so there is no chance that you can see. And there's plenty of cases where you have sulfides, and the gold grade turns out to be very low. New Legacy's avocado target has so far turned out to be such a disappointment. And of course, Barrick drilled a $5 million hole on Carlin Gold's Cortez Summit last year, where they had interesting looking stuff, and then they got into the carbonates, and all of a sudden it wasn't so interesting, and Barrick returned the property to Carlin Gold, saying, well, the system isn't present at this particular location. But what I find interesting about the NV Gold action at ATV is that this type of target, 400 meters plus deep, no chance of being open pittable, completely blind, it will require many expensive drill holes. And there is no way this market would be running like this unless there was a strong belief that with enough money and enough drill holes, you will vector in on the gold-enriched Cortez Hills breccia type of deposit, which is clearly going to make a mine an underground mine. So this is what's happening. The market's getting excited. Eric Sprott's a 14% shareholder of this. Quite likely he is jump-starting this in the market. And of course, he's a big investor in Novo itself, which is Quentin Henney's baby. And it's based on sort of geological reconstruction of the past with evidence collected through, surface sampling and just plain old gutsy drilling coming into a mineralization that probably isn't ore grade, but is indicative of being on the edge of something. One could even contrast this to what we're seeing with poor Bob Middleton's Rainy Mountain and its Brunswick project. There's sniffs of stuff there. There's a big system there, but that company does not yet have anybody behind it with the will to make it happen. This seems to be happening for NV Gold. Nevada really needs a major discovery made undercover, and this right now is the new leading candidate to deliver a major Nevada discovery on our Discovery Watch program.
John, thanks for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.